Okay, welcome. It is Tuesday, November 6, 2018, 6 p.m. Call the Rockingham Select Board meeting to order. There's still an hour to get to the polls if you haven't gotten there yet. And I also first off want to say congratulations to the Bellows Falls Union High School girls cross-country team for winning the state championship and the field hockey team for winning Division I. Congratulations. Okay. Are there any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters or pressing matters that will need ratification?
I have none.
Okay. Approved minutes of November 3rd, not yet. For some reason, a 5.5 hour meeting has not been put into minutes yet, Carrie. Come on.
She tried. She tried really hard.
I did try.
In the last 2 days? Come on, can't you work faster?
Yeah.
Thank you, though. We'll get to those the next time.
Yeah.
Any public comment on items not on the agenda? All right. Manager's report.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I have a brief report. Update, the Chroma ribbon cutting is on Thursday morning. You should have received an invitation to that, so it's good news. The town hall cleaning to get rid of the mold is on schedule. That's going to be happening the next 3 weeks, so folks will be down in this area. We moved their offices. The elevator work is scheduled to start December 17th, and the highway department is still picking up leaf and yard debris Mondays and Fridays only through November 30th. The debris needs to be in clear bags or bundled, and you can take it to the recycling center for free. And that's all I have.
So people who are coming in next week to pay taxes, they can still go to the second floor?
Yes, the second floor will still, yes.
That's next week,
Until-
right?
Because we're not moving until the following week.
No, we're moving to the 14th.
The 14th, okay. So, and those are due on the 13th because of the holiday?
Right. And then they can still come down here. They can get down through the elevator.
Okay, good point.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to the agenda. We're continuing the department budget discussions. The first on board is the Rockingham Fire Department. Dennis Jeffers.
And you have the general fund, it was sent out to you today, the revenues and the expenditures. And
The fire is on page 11 of 14.
14.
Yeah. All right. Wow, is that correct for words?
you know what, I think that's a typo.
Okay, good.
Yep. The workers' comp, the first thing,
Page
20,
11.
yep.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay,
I was gonna
there,
say,
it
boy, it
saved.
went up
Saved.
a lot, if that was the case.
Okay.
All right.
So then, Dennis, if you just want to go through, not much has changed. There's some equipment that'll be needed next year.
Yes, yeah, what I've got right now, I've got 22, 23 Scott Air bottles that expire next year, that gotta be replaced.
Grants?
23,
22?
22, 23 of them.
Yeah.
Have you looked at grants on that?
I've tried,
Because those,
looking at a couple
Sean, see
places.
Sean up there, Sean's keep me up to date on those. I get emails all the time from the grant people saying they're available for all that stuff, so
Okay,
won't cost you any money. Like, and Sean will do your paperwork for you. He says he's more than willing to fill it out. So just stop in there, start the pain in the neck, I can tell you, I've looked at them. But yeah, they got money sitting there waiting for you to just ask for it.
Okay,
that's good
And you
news.
can probably get all 23 of them at the same time. Because that's, they consider that as an emergency
I'd like to
expense.
spread them out a little bit instead of having them all come due at the same time. but
Yeah.
Well,
That's probably the stuff we all got for a grant back in '04, and
Yeah.
everything
Usually it's staggered.
expires at the same time.
Yeah.
How long do they last? I mean, what's
15 years.
15 years, yeah.
Or the running belt.
With
That's probably
a,
right.
had to be hydrostatic tested every
Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah.
About $3,000 a set now, or those set up?
Well, the tanks themselves are, well, anywhere from 500 to 2,000,
Yeah,
depends on where you get them from.
yeah.
Did you go, includes hoses and all, anything you want on it, just write it on, shout
Yeah.
it, just fill in what you need, and they'll, they
Okay,
usually
I'll-
qualify, especially rural departments, they're
Yeah.
usually right on the top of the list. So,
I'll do that.
yep.
All right, is there anything else that's, anything else?
That's
pretty much the
equipment's the
same.
only one I had boofed on. One of them, the gas oil repairs, I dropped down because we got 2 new trucks, so.
Mhm.
A question for the manager, basically. The very first line, is that a correct number of 25,000?
No, that's a typo.
I was gonna say,
And
holy
it's-
smoke, I hope the hell it's
Oh, yeah,
quotes in the wrong
nope,
font.
nope, so we can
Went from
save.
25 to 25,000, I
Yep,
guess there.
that was an
Whoa.
easy 20,000.
Please,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. No, that's a mistake.
Other than that, I think everything else is
Pretty much the
pretty
same.
much the same.
Mm-hmm.
How's the water supply working up there?
Good, great. If I get rid of those tanks in the corner, it'd be help.
Okay. I think we're looking at some other options there too. Peter mentioned to follow up from last year on the generator, and there was some concern for reference getting the doors open
Yeah.
electrically.
Doors and radios.
We'll be taking a look at that.
Do we have a general idea how much generator is?
Yeah, I've investigated that, I've been on the internet, you can get them, there's one sale in Connecticut, it's only got 350 hours on it. And still for sale, 21,000, I think it is. But it says 150 kilowatts, I don't know what size generator, I gotta
Yeah.
call in the Hennessy to
Yeah, I'm
see
not
what
really
they
sure.
need
I
up
don't
there.
know.
And then that will, you can, they're all over the field, I mean, you can find
Yeah.
tons of them out there, and they're not that far away to go get them.
My thoughts are if we could get one that was big enough to handle all the garage
Yeah, well,
doors,
that's-
if we elected,
Yeah.
and the lighting and the radios, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
And I figured 40 kW.
And they're 3-phase, they're all 3-phase, the ones I'm looking at, I'm not gonna fiddle with the other ones, so.
All right, any other questions about fire? All right, thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you for
thank
coming
you.
by.
So we have a
That was painless.
quiet
Dennis.
winter.
It usually is, not like going to the dentist.
All right. Okay, Lister's office. Camilla.
It's on page 2.
And then the listers had an explanation of some of the changes that they're asking for.
Copies.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, so I went ahead and made
You did it,
copies
okay,
too, yeah.
thank you. Okay, our overall budget, we're proposing a $5,000 increase. And that is in the wage line. There's only one other, before we talk about that, there's one other line that actually drops a little bit, which is training, and that is not because we aren't going to be doing training, particularly with a newish lister. It's because the state of Vermont and the Vermont Assessors and Listers Association have worked out an arrangement where those really significant training courses that we go to are going to be $100, not $450. That's one line that's gone down. So that, unless there are other questions about some of these things, I would speak to the wages line. Are there other questions
Other
about the
questions?
other
You
line?
Go right to wages? No, all right.
Okay. So we are proposing to, the short version of it is raise each of our hourly rates by $2. And there are several ways that this would be a good thing, particularly in the long run. The work that the listers have to do, we've talked to you about this before, has become much more complicated, and it's much more of a service to the people in the town who come in and need to understand how they get their property tax adjustment claim, what's current use, how does the grand list work, what's an exempt property, not an exempt. There's many facets to all this, and I know that you all are particularly aware of that in your work. So we provide that kind of service, but I think the reappraisal that we've gone through that is really, now we're getting a whole year out and we're seeing a kind of steadiness, both in the statistics that are coming back with us and in the people that, the property taxpayers. It has been a particularly successful result, and I think we mostly remember what it's like when it's inequitable. And that equity piece is something that the world takes for granted as long as it's working fine. But when it's not working fine, there's no peace in your town. And things really get pretty haywire, and it's extremely difficult to get it back into a good balance. So we heard the people, we went and we got the training, and it really took 10, 12 years to get ready to do that, and then 3 years to implement it. So what we're paid now has no benefits of any kind. It's part-time, and there are enough of us with a half-time assistant to make that work quite well. But there are two of us who are gonna probably retire before the next reappraisal. And this town, to continue the now well-demonstrated benefit of having somebody who's committed, who sticks around, who does all the training, and, you know, belongs here and understands this town, is a long-term commitment. And if that's the case, we need to attract people who are being paid a wage that is not a retiree's civic service kind of wage. So that is, I think, a particularly important long-term vision to have in mind. And I don't think that these wages with no benefits are going to attract a young person who could look at this as a career now. That's something that I particularly want to bring to your attention. Otherwise, this is all talking about what other towns get, minimum, maximum, Stowe. These are towns we picked that are sort of in our range. Stowe pays a full-time assessor at, in the range of $70,000 to $80,000 a year for full-time work. That's with benefits. That translates into $33 to $38 an hour. That's on the high end. And there are others that you can see on this list on the other page, who are in the range of $26 an hour, $18 to $24 an hour, $22 an hour. Rockingham, the high is 18, and the new lister is in the 14.5 per hour. And Linden is the other town that's closer in the range that we are. So as averages go out there, this size community, I think we're targeting an appropriate increase.
Questions?
I just want to say, I think you're doing a great job. I was flabbergasted when I found out you didn't have any tax appeals this year.
Not one.
And, yes, so you're doing a great job.
We're a little bit flabbergasted too, to tell you the truth. Yeah. Yeah.
Gaetano?
The 16 hours, that's pretty normal. 16 hours a week is what you guys work.
For each of us, yeah. It fluctuates around, but that's how we budget it on an average. You know, week by week, it's not exactly that.
And when you mentioned the next generation possibly coming in, and you mentioned a career, so with three people do the position probably because you each have different skill sets, I imagine.
Okay, let's round that picture out a little bit. Joan Harlow does half-time assistant work for the Lister's office. She's nearing retirement age, 3-4 years. And when you consider her half-time position and what work we do, there is a full-time position
Okay.
somewhere in that office with
Okay.
benefits, and it would
Gotcha.
be tremendously beneficial.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So one person could potentially do all of that?
Pretty close with, I have often thought one person could do it, but I think I might be a little optimistic. I think somebody would, the elected listers that work with a full-time assessor person would be the ideal. Because there is a kind of equity consideration that I think you get when you get three minds working together who know the town and know the people and are kind of there saying, now, what about thinking of it this way? We do a lot of that debating, and I think it benefits the whole situation.
Any other questions?
Me, I'm all set.
All right,
Okay?
okay.
you.
Well,
All right, good.
when we start crunching all these numbers. Oh, Deb, yeah.
I do have one question on the budgeting, and it's
Sure.
only, and I agree with you, Laura, but, the last full completed fiscal year, you went to almost that rate already. So you used $4,700 over the budgeted amount for FY '18. I don't know where you're tracking for FY '19, and so I'm wondering is if that's realistic, an actual realistic number when you might go over your budget amount of $38,250 now, not knowing where your fiscal year's gonna end out in 6 more months.
So the FY '18 number that you see there was included several months where we worked more than 16 hours each because of the follow-up after lodging the grand list. And there were some appeals, and we continued to go out and look at some properties where we needed to follow up. We hadn't done the Vermont Academy, so we spent some time doing that, for example. So it was probably 3 months where we worked more than the 16 hours that we then normalized to.
So you're anticipating that this fiscal year you'll probably be within budget, that's what I'm asking.
I think pretty close, yeah.
So your $5,000 increase is realistic, but every year you do an assessment, that year. the numbers will
When a
go up.
reappraisal occurs,
Reappraisal,
yes,
yes.
and it includes a separate budget, a reserve
For that.
budget that we build up from money the state provides over the years, and it would be about, I assume, about 10 years from now.
Okay, that was my question. When will it be?
All right, thanks, Deb. Anything else? All right, thanks, Camille. All right, rec department. Right.
12. Page 12.
Eight.
Page, Peter?
Page 12.
On page 12. Before we start, I know I've noticed pleas out there for people who want to do the volleyball and what was that?
Adult co-ed volleyball,
Uh-huh.
and last week for signups for 3 through 6 basketball, for,
Basketball.
girls and boys.
We'll get some.
A little low numbers this year for basketball, so I think there's some kids that haven't signed up yet. So.
Yeah. Well, it still feels like summer in some places, or fall.
But now
Quite ready
it's
for
dark at
winter.
4:30.
Yeah, that'll change people's
Yeah,
minds.
that changed everyone's view.
All right, so rec department.
I mean, the budget hasn't really, it's changed, I mean, slightly. This year coming up, I gotta do a few projects. Wall Street fence line, irrigation, needs to be looked at. But besides that, down there, everything else is good down there. And just basically upkeep, with the frost heaves up at the rec, that's been a constant extra money for the last couple of years on the tennis court and on the basketball court. The cracks get surfaced every year, and I have to fix that every year for insurance policies. 'Cause they
Makes
don't want-
dribbling a little more fun.
Huh?
Makes dribbling a little more fun.
Makes the ball just go one way or the other. But we did go low last year, but last year, since the new pump was put in for the pool, it actually made the electricity go down almost like $3,000. So you could tell that pump went and burnt out, so that's why I was just drawing so much electricity. And then we did get a donation from the schools for our cultural art. We do arts and crafts up there, so I didn't have to spend freaking $3,000 there. So we got to save a lot of money last year, and the weather didn't help out a lot here and there for the summer because it was very rainy, like it has been this year too. So, but I think the budget is right around where it's been for the last few years. So.
Yeah, a little less.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, just in that. Oh yeah, and the internet. I upgraded the internet up there, so they made the bill go way down for some reason, just by upgrading. So here and there, just about, been saving a little bit of money.
And we're ready, the rope tow, what's the status with that at this point?
Rope tow, I believe, I looked over there today and I believe it's just got mowed. Looked like it just got mowed, but it was like dark when I got up there.
Yeah.
And Mike just has to fix, he has to put a, oh geez, what's that thing called? A bolt through, all the way through with thread on the wheel bearing, because it popped off last year. Once he puts that wheel bearing back on, we're gonna line the rope back on, and then I'll have the guy come and inspect it again. But it should be fine. The rope wasn't damaged when he popped off.
Okay, Tommy?
So the slope mowing
Yep.
memo, that must have been a 2018 expense. That expense is quite high. Who are we paying someone else? Who mows it?
That was because of the tree fell on the line, so we had to pay for all the poles and lights
Oh,
to
so
be
that's
fixed.
just,
It's only Buck Adams did it last year. He's been charging the same thing every year for $700 to do the whole tow. And
and
sled
did
it.
the power get fixed up there for the lights?
The
And
just
the tree fell.
the power to the gate did, but not to the lights. I have Lawrence and Lobert looking at it right now, and they should be going up there to fix the lights within this month. So
Wasn't that happening last year?
we went. It was supposed to be part of the deal, but Shane didn't want to go up. He just had us do what we could to fix the bottom of it, and then it didn't work for the lights all the way up. But the power to the gate, the emergency gate there at the end, still worked. So the only thing that has to be done is they have to run a new line for all the lights, so then the lights can work. And that's going to be around, I think the quote was like $38,000 or $40,000. So.
Do we have that in here?
No, that was me just happening this year.
Oh, okay.
That's one of
This
those.
year's
It's just
Okay.
so. I mean, but I think we're gonna have a little bit of room for this last year. So I'll just make it work one way or another. But hopefully we get enough snow and we should be open up.
It stops raining.
There was snow one day, rain the next, and it washes away.
I mean, but luckily when the rope popped off, the wheel bearing there. Luckily the kid was right there that hit the switch because it didn't damage the rope. Just had the guy come down from tramway and he checked it out. It's good. So all we gotta do is really just get the rope back on there, and then we should be good to go.
That's good. Any questions or anything else before we go to questions?
Yep. Oh, questions?
Questions? Yep.
Hey, playground wages. 18, we budgeted 41,000, you spent 31 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
You got 40 grand in there this year. Can you,
That will sometimes that will fluctuate. Because if we have rainy days, I usually send a lot of staff home. So if we have a nice summer where it's perfect, almost picture perfect, then we'll be close to that. We'll be close to that 40,000. That and I rerun a full day camp. And that also, I don't know why that was so low really, but we've been down a little bit because I was up the previous year. I think that's why it was put up a little bit. But when the when the weather's bad, I do send a lot of people home. And the last 2 summers have been really bad with the winter. So I usually have 3 to 4 people on at a time. And then when the weather's bad, I only leave 1 to 2.
I would say the same with I know you mentioned before the lifeguard wages.
Yeah.
You had problems getting lifeguards, and I assume that's why that's low.
Nope. I was almost had trouble getting. It was just wet. So again, when it thunders and lightnings, lifeguards go home for the afternoon, and we save money. Yeah.
I mean, that's not as much of an increase. If you look at the spending, it's 9,000 versus.
And that and the population of swimming out in Saxon River's gone down. So where I used to staff 3 or 4 lifeguards out there, it's like now I only do 2. Because there's usually maybe a dozen people go out there a day.
How was that issue with the problem with the water out there?
This year it was, you know, pretty big issue, towards the end when it
Yeah.
happened, but, you know, I still think it was just maybe a small break, because the sample we did send, it was negative, so.
Okay.
And the sample the woman sent over was positive,
Huh.
and that was taken within 4 to 5 days.
Right.
To each other. So I think it would be all right. I mean, there's been a lot of, they used to put dye in it,
Right, yeah.
in chemicals, but you can't do that because it's around wetland.
Yeah.
Because the dye runs into the beaver pond, into the
Yeah.
wetland, so it usually has the algae killer and the blue dye, but they don't want that.
Now, do
in
we,
there.
you still have some plan to, this next season to test?
This year, we're gonna do testing, and all the lifeguards are gonna watch the video. Chuck and I have been talking about it. We're gonna have all the kids watch a video on how to identify blue-green algae and other contaminants in the water if it starts looking
Yeah.
a little yucky.
I'm just looking to, we establish, if we do, in the event there is a problem, we can establish, hey, it tested out right here.
Yep.
Then it isn't testing here, right?
We usually always test it for every 2 weeks for salmonella.
Yeah.
So that's every usually 2
Okay.
weeks, unless we can't get if the mail company messes up.
Right.
Then we have to go do it again.
Do it again, yeah.
So sometimes it can be 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Always depending on the mail.
Oh, that sounds good. We're on top of it then.
Yeah, I mean we stay on top of it, and I'm always out there, 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah.
I always go out there and visually inspect it myself. So,
Sure.
Just to make sure.
Yep, sounds good.
Peter, you had another question?
Playground supplies, Ryan,
Yep.
you had 5,518, we only spent 4,000.
Yeah.
You went up 17.5 because you put the
Playground in.
$12,000 note for a playground structure.
Yeah.
And now we're going to 10,000.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to start upkeeping, especially with wood chips, for up top at the high school. Oh, at the high school. Up at the rec center, up at the pool, and down there. This year I won't have to worry about that, but usually I have to get between 50 and 100 yards, which costs between $3,000 and $4,000 just in wood chips, because they want it that 12 inches of
I know,
cushion.
yeah.
So now every single structure you have, it's off the ground. You have to put that. So next year I have to do that up there. So that's one of the expense. And then I'm gonna try to do other little projects in there to try to buy things for the kids to play on and play with.
You said basketballs.
Yep.
A particular item.
Because I have to redo my inventory because that also goes with equipment that kids play with, like floor hockey sticks, basketballs, and ping pong, and all that stuff. So it's a somewhat large budget line that goes everywhere.
Anything else? All right, great.
One more.
Oh, one more?
One more.
Just off the top of your head, I was looking at your revenue. You only had $820 to come in for basketball.
We had.
I know it's field hockey went almost double. That's why I'm just
Field hockey is well attended. The last couple of years, even this year, the number is just going down. What I'm expecting, I mean, from what I thought was going to come out, a lot of kids are just not coming out to play basketball anymore. I mean, I think we might have maybe 50 this year. That's boys and girls, 3 through 6. We're gonna fill 4 teams, but there's gonna be 7 to 10 kids maybe on each team. We always had like 13 to 15 kids on each team. My first year I took over, we had 7 teams. So I mean, it's just gone down a lot. So
Maybe we'd have a basketball champ if we had more kids playing basketball.
That would do it.
We have field hockey. I
That
mean,
would do it.
That really
No, yeah,
gets
we-
kids into that.
well, that's
program.
all. She takes first graders through 6th grade. So and we had 55 or 60, almost 60 kids out there this year.
Nice.
So it's well attended. A lot of and we have about the same number for softball, and that's been going up and down a lot throughout the years. A lot of kids are just not playing sports these days when they're younger, and they're not really going out much. You're sitting in there doing that.
Right.
I read a story that Kids
future
spend less
listers.
time outside than prisoners do these days. That's scary.
Oh, my gosh.
So we really ought to get our, people go to the rec. Come on.
So, yeah, so I mean, I'm trying to come up with new stuff. We're gonna be trying to do a lot more different things, activities this summer. Break it up from, because it's been kind of the same norm for the last few years, so I'm gonna try to add a few more things in there for kids to come up and see if it's something new, so.
Great.
You give any thought to programs for seniors? I know we talked about this last year. You know, I don't know if you had an exercise thing or something, or I remember we talked about it last year.
I mean, yeah,
Look at it.
it's a good, I think it's a good thought, but, that play area is really not big enough. Cause I mean, your capacity is like 35 to 40 people, max. So I mean, when you start wanting to do exercise and you're adding this and that around there, with that, and you have a pool table that you can't move. So that takes up a lot of space. But one thing I am trying to do this summer is we're gonna do water aerobics.
I was just gonna ask
So
you.
we are gonna start doing that.
I think
then.
that would be
Yeah.
good.
We're gonna start doing that for adult swim at 12 to 1, and then for the nighttime one too. So
Okay.
that is in the plans.
All right. Any other questions? Great. Thanks a lot, Ryan.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, have a good night.
Okay,
Stay
moving
dry.
on. Planning, zoning, health. Chuck.
Page 4.
Page 4.
I wonder how long it is, because I got my cheap food back there.
And all of these are online for anyone else out there who is interested in looking at these numbers that we're looking at. They're all available online, I
They will
believe,
be
right? Not yet?
soon.
They will be?
Yeah.
Okay. But remember, it fluctuates because we go through these numbers and we make changes, but
Page 4.
page
4 of 14 are the expenditures.
Page 4.
Partway down the page. All right, Chuck.
So it's a relatively simple budget. It's not changed much from last year or the year previous. Does reflect some amendments to acknowledge the fact that we have been securing additional grant funding through the Municipal Planning Grant Program. And as a result of that grant funding, there's a local cash match requirement as well as just ancillary costs associated with supporting a grant of that magnitude, but those costs are not eligible expenses. So you'll see some changes reflected there. The other change, which I think is worth discussing, is the addition of technical consulting fees. We've had a history of this in the past where there were a set aside for projects that are unique in nature. So the select board or the trustees are struggling with a topic that will be remanded to the planning commission for review and recommendation. They are not a board that makes decisions, but they can be a board that's duly empowered to give you all recommendations for action. And that could be anything from tractor truck studies to land use decisions or anything like that. That money will not be allocated unless it's through the direct decision of either board and through a decision of the planning commission. So that's something that's similar to our legal fees, which is a set aside that is used only if we have to. And in some years you don't use it. So other than that, it's pretty much steady as we go. It's a relatively simple budget.
Okay, you do have, getting on page 12 of 14, deputy health officer, which there was a stipend, and now it's allocating.
If it's okay with you, Stefan, I would prefer we go over planning and zoning and then move to the health. It'll be a separate presentation.
That'll work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions on the planning and zoning side?
This is the other half of the administrative assistant.
Yep.
You heard about from the listers.
All right, no questions? We'll move on to the next.
Health, and Stefan just hit the nail right on the head. One concept that you all may consider is we have not had a deputy health officer And the nature of this position is a lot like the zoning administrator. You're appointed by the select board, or in this case, I'm appointed by the Department of Health, and I'm the only officer duly authorized to respond to health issues. A lot of it's rental housing, and you all know this type of work, but we really haven't had a second to date. That concept right here is this move of 10% of Chief McGinnis's salary. He is proven to be very instrumental and helpful in our work, collaborating together, and we would be moving him in a direction of being the deputy health officer. This is essentially moving 10% of a salary, a line item that's currently in the village account, and moving it towards the town, making sure that he is available for rental housing inspections and other health calls. So he would be a deputy health officer. To speak to a change that has happened this year, when we have rental housing deficiencies, and that is a huge portion of this work, we have gone in, there's been very little direction or directive from the state as to how we conduct our business. And if anybody's been watching this over the last 10 or 15 years, we've seen an increasing effort to professionalize that position. And what was a seismic shift in our field was this year the legislature said, look, when you go do rental housing reviews, you just can't go in and pick a piece. So sometimes I go in a basement and I'm worried about that one thing, that heater not working, or that I actually now have to conduct a full comprehensive study of that apartment complex. I'm supportive of that guidelines because it does meet a lot of our combined objectives, which is getting early intervention with these housing situations before they land on our plate in a demolition circumstance. But this is a new vocabulary for us, and it means that whereas in the past I would go in and look at that heater and then be gone, my work is going to be changing, where I'm doing comprehensive reviews, looking at everything. So I might get called in for one item, but I am now there for a comprehensive review. And for me, that illustrates the imperative to have another set of eyes, another person that's looking at some of these issues.
So at this point, none of your salary gets allocated towards health as versus planning zoning. It's all
And I
under
can't
planning
speak to
zoning.
that. That's historic, that I've just been billed out of planning and zoning.
Yeah.
But because we're going from village to town, I think it's a different animal.
Right. No, I was just gonna say, to make things clear, I would think we would want to eventually do it that way, especially because of this new role where you're spending, I mean, you might have been, before you sort of called into something, now it's a lot more work, what you're
Yeah,
saying.
and Wendy's challenging all of us to think about cost accounting, and I'll be moving in that direction to give you more definitive answers as to how my time is allocated, because it is seasonal, it gets confusing, it's not a way that I've thought about things, but to get the budget to match accurately how I work, I think that's a good goal.
Yeah, I just want to add something. The health officer, it's pretty typical, I understand, to have a pretty low stipend and expect a lot out of that person. So it was $250 a year. And a lot of towns are struggling with how to pay something that is reasonable, where you can have expectations of professionalism and knowledge. And what I like about this proposal, one of the things is that it fits well with our plan to address rental issues and opportunities, honestly, try to use a carrot and a stick, but having more eyes there and some funding for the program, it makes sense to me.
Any questions, Peter?
Appointment process. I think
Say again?
Isn't it an appointment process for your deputy? Doesn't he have to be appointed by the health commissioner?
That's right, but I do believe the proposal first starts with the select board, and if the select board feels comfortable, then we'll consider that next step.
Okay,
Ultimately,
I
a
just
deputy
wondered.
health officer has to be nominated, or appointed, by the Department of Health.
Yeah, it's recommended by the board, select board supposedly hands it over to the health commissioner.
That's right, but to date, we've made no, we've
Yeah,
taken
no,
no
I
action.
I know it's a proposal, I just,
Yeah.
Okay, Donna?
Didn't we nominate or something last year, a deputy health officer? Wasn't, we have this conversation?
Frank Anderson.
Pepper?
Yes.
So we've had this position before.
And we never tapped it. We were trying to move in that direction,
Okay.
and then he resigned. But that was the hope, that we would move in this direction. that did not succeed, and then serendipitously I found, because we're looking for that kind of skill set that Frank Anderson had when you walk in, and I'm actually speaking to somebody that knows, the builder's eye. That Joyce is failing right there. Those kinds of things you can't find easily in our staff. We do have it with the chief.
So essentially, is there some code, like someone says, there's some weird black stuff on my walls, or they think they have bed bugs, and you guys show up, now you're doing a thorough, essentially, home inspection. What rules are you following?
Right now, the Department of Health has a very comprehensive, it's about a 14-page document you have to go through on those elements such as bugs, water, heating and all that. The chief brings in another element. He can be more able to deal with the life safety component, the fire safety. So we're going to get trained up on that as well. So it's going to be a 1-2 combination. I'll be handling primarily the rental housing through the Department of Health, that code, and he would be dealing with the life safety code.
And this is for rental property, or let's say, what about a private residence? If a neighbor was concerned about something, could you also go in a private residence and say, I mean, you can't, right? I mean, it's completely unsafe, it's full of something bad.
That's right. We don't have a lot of regulatory support at the moment.
Just for rentals.
The planning, so yes, it's your God-given right at a privately owned house to build something that is unhealthy to your well-being. Rental housing, it's the expectation that somebody who's renting a space is not in a position to know that's healthy. The state has afforded them a certain level of protection. That said, as we tackle this elephant that has irked a lot of us in terms of these buildings going downhill, it may be an element to that we can get into through an initiative that started with Peter, blighted properties, vacant properties, things that are marginal, that are causing distress to neighborhoods, that we may have the expertise to go in and evaluate that, even though it's not rental housing. So that's a long-term goal.
Okay, any other questions?
10%, by the way, is a notion of incrementalism. Try it out, be very conservative. Do not be surprised if we come back, if you were to move in this direction, we say this is what we learned this year, and we want to consider an additional change to the hours. So this is our first exploration.
Any plans to consult with the Board of Trustees as to how they feel? Because evidently this is the first I've heard of it outside of seeing it here in the budget book. And as a courtesy, that probably should have been long before it arrived here tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
Is the proposed appointee gonna need training or anything? Do we have to, should we be looking at money for that?
We have a set aside, thankfully, a lot of the Department of Health training, because it's such an important issue that's affecting everybody. It's largely funded by the state.
Oh, okay.
So these trainings are essentially mileage and time, and that's an expense,
Yeah.
but it's not a direct cost. There will be some life safety training costs that we're looking at right now, but that gets to the fire safety issue.
No, I'm just curious. It's nice to know that, that's all. But I didn't know that it was covered by something else, so.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The rest of the budget, Wendy, are we gonna be going over that in the next meeting somewhere?
Yes,
Okay.
I want to ask if you would like to do that at your next meeting, or if you want to do a meeting before your next regular select board meeting. I didn't know if you wanted to do any
Isn't that much left to go over,
extra.
really? I mean, we got all the paperwork we need, so if we got any questions, we can peruse it the next 2 weeks and.
Right,
we
right, just
need
the
it.
general government items. Obviously, there are things that still need to be fixed. I mean, we found the mistake tonight, and there's some others. I know we saved. Look, good thing it was
Yeah.
an adjusted down instead of adjusted up. That's what we want. That's true. But yeah, there's a few things that need to be cleaned up, and the one thing you still don't have, and maybe there's more, but you don't have the equipment replacement program for the for the
For
highway
highway.
fund.
Yeah.
But I
And,
think all of the major things you have.
Well, I'd asked about highway wages and such, so we need to,
Yeah, and I expect we'll have another meeting on highway, right? I mean.
Yeah, well, we
that-
talked
we
about
wanna
bringing
get
the
back.
highway, some
Right
people
through
back.
December, probably we'll be beating on this stuff.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, we haven't even got to the point
I
where.
thought you
we're-
said we were talking one more meeting, we should be all set. Is that what you just said?
No, just going
No,
over the,
Just bring up the rest of it for our first run through, and then everybody can figure out where they wanna chop their prices and go from there. So.
yeah, I mean, to keep, we're gonna have to do some cutting to get to level funded, for sure.
I've made my notes, I'm
Yeah.
sure everyone.
That's what I said.
Right, and what,
Um,
yeah, can I just explain the rationale behind what you have so far?
Mhm.
The current tax revenue is based on the most recent property value and the most recent tax rate. So it's slightly more than was in the current year's budget, not much more. One thing that is in the current year's budget, in the FY19 budget, is a transfer from reserves of $100,000. That might not be necessary. We'll know more as we go farther. And there is an excess of revenues over expenditures from the last budget, from the FY18 budget, of more than 100,000. So that's, better that news than the other way.
Yeah, but we may wanna decide to put those into some of the
Into
reserve
some of the other
funds that we
reserves.
have,
Right.
as opposed to,
Right.
you know, cut in the budget, but put that into reserve fund.
Sure.
But we'll have these discussions later. So we also spoke last week, on Saturday, of bringing a few people back to do more. I've now already forgotten who it was.
But you've got Gary DeRocha coming.
Oh, Gary, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're bringing back Gary Fox for Development Director
yep,
position and the meeting house.
yes, correct.
Right, so Gary Fox and Everett are coming back, and Gary DeRocha is coming for the first time. The recycling budget is going to be more complicated, or it should be more complicated, because we really need to start looking at other revenues, and we've talked about this a little bit with the sticker system. Everyone from outside the town is paying the same amount for the stickers. And what would be helpful, we've been approached by Athens to make a bulk arrangement with them, so that Athens would pay the town a certain amount, we don't know what amount, we haven't just begun to talk about talking, and then their residents would get a lower rate for the stickers, and we just think there's a lot of advantages to that, because the collection of the funds is easier and less expensive, and it takes less time, and there's just some certainty in it too. So I think if we can do that for more of the towns, because as Peter knows, and Gaetano's been there too, there's a lot of folks from other towns, other states, that are using our recycling center, which is more than just a recycling center, it's a solid waste center too.
But you're talking a lower rate than what our own residents pay?
No.
No.
From Athens, a resident from Athens would purchase it from the
Yeah.
town.
Yeah, because our residents don't pay anything, they
Mhm.
pay zero.
Well, they do pay in their tax
Right.
bill.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean,
Gaetano?
Speaking of payments and quick and stuff, I bring this up a lot, but I'd like to really look into point of sale system down there, more accurate. We're handing cash to now 3 different places with no receipt. We're assuming the cash gets back. So at the new trash dumpster now, that guy's taking cash. Over at the window, they're taking cash. We're paying cash upstairs, some kind of system. We're paying the movie cash, some kind of full system where we could accept credit cards, smartphones, and watches. It's 2018. We talked about this last year.
Yes, we are working on that, and we're not gonna be taking cash at the recycling, or at the dumpster, at the compactor. That's supposed to be tickets.
That's already in the works.
Right.
Gary's already ordered, no cash in the buckets. It's over there. But the problem with that is.
Last Wednesday,
The
was
problem with
taking
that
cash.
is that a guy comes in, throws 3 or 4 bags in, they tell him to go pay the window, and the guy goes over and says, well, I only got 2 bags.
Right.
So, we have to tighten that up to figure out, you know, either we give him a slip of paper or something, says, okay, this is what you gotta pay, and the guy goes over and hands it in. And
Right.
right now, we don't have that system, and, you know, and people that leave stuff in that building down there, 9 times out of 10, what they leave is a piece of crap, we have to throw it away, and there's no real delineation of how much they're charging for each stuff. The other day, some guy came in with 3 vacuum cleaners, and Gary says, they work? Well, they did when I used them last. Well, that's not, so Gary says, well, we usually told me, he says, we usually get $3 of those, $3 for the vacuum cleaner, because we end up throwing it away. But there's nowhere is there that all people work there that know what they're supposed to be charging. So it's like, somebody comes in and says, oh, $5 for that. Next one comes in, same thing, $10 for that.
Are they selling any tickets
It's
down there at
crazy.
all?
There's no plan down there.
Are they selling any tickets down there at all?
Oh, yeah, they're selling tickets. I haven't been down there.
So it should be, I know it may be inconvenient, but before you throw your bag, if you don't have some tickets, you need to go purchase some tickets.
Gaetano?
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of work to do down there, but more about this cash, and we can either pay with cash or check to pay your taxes. I think there's potential for easier accountability for everything if we get on some system that accepts credit cards for a town-wide process.
Agree, and then actually, let me just, I don't know if people know about this, but there is a, you can sign up for a system that will debit your savings account or checking account to pay your taxes and I think your water bills. Carrie, do you know? So we do have automatic bill payment that's available from our website. But yes, we need a lot more than that.
Okay, well, we'll be revisiting this, our next
Yeah,
meeting.
it's something we should talk about Gary when he comes in, and
Yeah.
see what he's got ideas or, but it needs looking into, the whole thing. you know.
All right, anything else on
One more
budget?
thing.
Yep.
I mean, revenue is up since we've implemented that thing, right? And we're relying on volunteers. I think the majority of the problems just discussed seem like staffing. If you had someone here, someone there, so we're relying on volunteers, so maybe look at, you know, is there any funding to balance out something?
You know, if you look at the recycling, there is a proposal in there to hire another person in there.
Yeah, there's a half-time position that's
Yeah.
funded this year
Yeah.
that we'd like to
So-
get filled.
I really
Yeah.
think too, there ought to be some thought into changing the hours or increasing the hours in some form or fashion.
All right.
Yeah, we thought about that.
Can we hold this off? I mean, I don't mind, but, I mean, we're going into something that's not on the agenda, so I would rather we just
Well, it
move
means more
whole-
money on the budget.
No, but, yeah,
Yeah.
we're talking about this in 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
we can have a more comprehensive talk in 2 weeks about, and so think about all these things and bring them to 2 weeks from now, and we'll discuss it then.
And I'd appreciate it if you tell me in advance, and then I can be more prepared if it's something
Right.
that I need to do some research on.
Okay. Moving on. Development Office. Gary.
So, the first item is the tax stabilization program. Going into the next 2 to 5 years, the number of commercial properties that are available for redevelopment are extensive, and the stabilization is one of the tools that, if used properly, can help incentivize that development and increase the property's taxes on the grand list. In 2008, Jeanette White did an extensive audit of the program, wrote up a great history. The Tax Stabilization Committee made some recommendations for policies and procedures, criteria, which ensure that the stabilization program is used appropriately, so it's an incentive, and it's used where it does ensure that the increase of the grand list long term. Those policies and procedures were recommended to go to town meeting in March 2009, and with the change in staffing, that piece didn't happen, it didn't move forward. So what's in your packet is all of the research work that she did, and so I guess what I'm looking for is to make a recommendation that first the select board seek to fully staff the stabilization committee. It's short one member since Paul Obahowski moved into the listers, and then that committee review these policies and procedures, ensure that they meet with the current committee, see if they find any issues, if there's any open items, and that committee bring them to you for adoption and to go to the 2019 town meeting.
Just 10 years late.
Has this committee ever met? I've never, I mean, I don't know how long, when was the last time you met? Probably back in 2008.
No, they met around the MDP.
Yeah.
With Vermed moving out, they had some meetings, and before that with SVG, before the listers and SVG knew about the state laws regarding incubators. They met on the SVG property. But I think those are the only times they've met in the past 5 years, approximately. But the board has appointed them each year, and this past March, you appointed.
You know who's on that, Gary?
Yes. So this past March, you appointed Tim Powers, Richard Stickney, Tom Hernan, and Dennis Hardy. And so whatever process you use for appointments, if it's making a call for that, if you want me to talk to people and find candidates to put forward, however you want to go about that.
Do we have a description of what they're supposed to be doing? I mean, give somebody an idea that's maybe not done it before, they might want to venture into it. I don't know.
Yes, I could put a paragraph together and attach
it
them.
doesn't have to be extensive, but I mean,
Yeah.
just give an idea what they're looking at before they step into the news, you know?
Yeah, yes.
Do you have anybody in mind, or have you talked to anybody lately, or?
I haven't.
Okay, I just curious,
Yeah.
you mentioned it.
Yeah, I can think of a few people that are currently involved in development in town, and have a vested interest in making sure programs work well, that I would reach out to.
Okay.
I don't know if there's ever been select board members on that committee, but that's certainly an option as well.
I don't think you want it, because I think
No.
some of the tax stabilization, they come to the town, so then
Yeah.
Gotcha.
you have
Okay.
conflict, so shouldn't be
They're
on there.
part of the BCA.
Oh, yes, understood.
So, that's the other thing, you've got to be careful who you pick because of BCA stuff too, so. That's it, I mean, you know.
Is it a
It says
requirement
two-
that this go to on a meeting warning, the town meeting warning? Because other policies don't go to town meeting. I don't know if that's a requirement or not, but usually just the select board approves them, adopts them.
Yeah, you would think.
You have to put this entire thing on town
Well,
meeting warning.
According to this handout you gave us, Gary, the draft, it says that the actual wording for the meeting was that shall the voters update and revise the authorization for the select board to enter into tax stabilization contracts pursuant to Vermont statutes, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I think that was just asking, it may have been a 5-year thing that comes up every so often that the board has to say they still want to do
Yeah.
tax stabilization or not. And
So, yeah, so what was passed in 1984 did include certain criteria for tax stabilization, which is required to go to town meeting by the by the legislation that authorizes tax stabilizations. And these policies and procedures include criteria. A couple of examples is what passed in the 1984 town meeting was 50% of the value of a property, and there was something in the language that was ambiguous that the 2008 crew wanted to clarify with these, and thought that the way it was authorized by town meeting needed to be updated and clarified. We could explore that and
Yeah,
get
I
an
remember
opinion
the
from Steve
50%
Ancudi.
thing. I remember when they changed that. I can
Yeah.
remember that one.
Yeah.
But
It says here, the select board will appoint an advisory committee of 5 as a tax stabilization committee. The members will include the municipal manager, municipal finance director, a lister, and 2 members at large. That's different from the committee you just mentioned.
It is.
Because Obi could stay on if it allows a lister.
We actually checked, and when he was elected lister, and we were told he could not
He could
stay
not.
on.
Okay,
Maybe
so
the-
then this whole thing is wrong.
It's
and-
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the other thing that might be interesting is keep people in a neutral capacity
Yeah.
rather than have people that are involved in the development around here, because that, may skew the thing and,
Could be
they
biased.
try and push their agenda. That's what I'm saying. Whereas these other people, Denny Hardy, he's retired, and Powers is retired. They're just looking out, they're community members, basically.
Yeah.
And so I think somebody in the neutral capacity would be better suited to be appointed or nominated for that.
So, if you're looking to have the committee look at this, you want at our next meeting to appoint someone? So will you come to us with some names?
Sure.
that we can
I'll put a
consider?
paragraph together and bring some, turn that in along with some recommendations.
But then we also you need the select board to approve the policies? So what we ought to do is update the policy,
Policies
correct
ought to be updated.
those,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and bring that to them, right?
Well, so this committee would spend a couple of meetings and go through
Yeah.
them.
Right.
Ideally
Okay.
by the end of December, and then bring them to the select board.
And come back to the select board,
Yes.
okay.
And if it has to go before the town meeting, what's the deadline? Like January, what?
Third
to
week
get
of
it?
January.
Third week of January? Carrie doesn't care anymore.
She's not gonna be here, so she doesn't care, really.
She's like, it won't be on my deadline. Don't worry about it. Third week of
Helpful
January?
For me to know that, third week of January?
Third week of January.
Okay. I'm guessing,
Yeah.
I'm asking.
I don't know, Dave.
Somewhere near the middle to the end of
Okay, so
January,
AM
evidently?
I would shoot for the middle.
Middle
Okay,
at the latest. Yeah.
okay.
It's what, 30, 45 days, something like that for a meeting, before the meeting, if I remember right.
Okay.
At least 30, if not 45 or something. I don't know how the wording goes, but something screwy like that.
So anything else on
Some goes on the
both of
morning,
those?
not us. and the very
View it.
top ones
Hmm?
in the morning.
John over there, so we keeping them up.
Yeah, I think that was A and B, and
Yeah,
then you
pretty
still
much
have
A and
C,
B.
the
Yeah.
tax stabilization agreement.
But there's nothing else on A and B. People are all set? Are you
Um,
good
Yeah.
on?
Let's see, what
All
was-
right.
A and B are just these two.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so we'll have something next meeting. Approved tax stabilization agreement, Sustainable Valley Group. So this is just the changes that have been made, correct? Because we've already,
It's formalizing the decisions that you
Yeah.
already made, and Gary drafted it, and Camilla also looked at it too.
all right,
Can I ask one question?
yep.
So this is based on a certain percentage of occupancy, this 1, 2, 3, 4-year agreement?
No, the pilot agreement is based on,
Not fully occupied.
right, so basically that, the first year was set by the listers according to the statute. And the portion that was considered unoccupied, so we actually, for the next 4 years, used the criteria that were in that 2008 stabilization program. So only the portion that is unoccupied that's being improved, that will increase in value, that portion is stabilized with an increasing tax rate. So it's starting with the pilot agreement for that portion, and saying, okay, this improved portion, there was $1,000 in pilot this year. We want to up that each year for the next 4 years, and then go with the a reappraisal based on the improvements.
Okay, any motion to approve?
The
or-
sheet that we've got, the packet came and there's 2 different sheets in here to sign. If you look at your packet,
Correct, yes, so,
and this one only has one, this new sheet that just came in, that we handed out, that was on the table.
yeah, so that is only the pilot agreement.
Right,
And then the other document, the tax stabilization agreement in the packet, is the second 4 years. So that's for year one, that one page.
this
And
one
then-
here, the one that was on the table.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the stabilization agreement is, I believe, an 8-page document.
Yeah. So they've also got to be signed, correct?
Yes, and that matches the document that we used with Vermed,
And both
which had
of
the
the,
appropriate clawback.
and both
pieces.
of these, we need to allow, authorize Wendy to sign, correct?
Yes.
We
Right.
don't need a select board. So, someone want to make a motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that the Town of Rockingham accept the tax stabilization policy or agreement and the 1-year notification of the tax assessment for 2018-19 and authorize the manager to sign all documents.
The 1 year's a pilot, yeah. Pilot.
Second.
Any discussion? Gaetano, looks like you have something, no?
I was trying to listen to what he was saying.
Authorizing the,
Manager to sign all documents, basically. It says for the pilot program and then the tax stabilization agreement.
I got a question. Will any of this have to go before the village board of trustees? Because part of that agreement does mention the village of Bellis Hall's in here.
No. I believe so. Tax stabilization is a town function.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. I know it's town function, just with the wording.
The pilot program, you might want to go because the pilot, you
Yeah.
get, you know.
all right, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Okay, next, Vilas Bridge requests select board concurrence to engage congressional representation.
Yeah, so basically, the issue with the Vilas Bridge is that the agreement from 1994 is between the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Historic Preservation, Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, and the State of New Hampshire Department of Transportation, and their Historic Preservation Commission. Vermont is not a party to that agreement at all. The agreement is pretty clear. It was a stipulation of work that they did. They were required to maintain and keep in use the Vilas Bridge. Vermont has done everything that we can from, in 2005, Representatives Partridge and Obahowski passed a joint resolution for State of Vermont to request that State of New Hampshire repair the bridge before 2010. At that time, it was on their 10-year transportation plan on the 10th year, which was 2015, and it was deemed nearly unsafe. New Hampshire did not change that, and they did close the bridge in 2009. Since then, Vermont legislature, New Hampshire legislators, let's see, the governor of Vermont, there have been many offers to New Hampshire to help do whatever we can to help fund repairing the bridge from a 50-50 match right up through, I think there was a governor offer to repair the whole bridge and get paid back over decades by New Hampshire covering Vermont's 7% share of other bridges on the Connecticut River, of the maintenance on those. And none of those worked. It came off the 10-year plan. Recently, the regional planning commissions have been pushing back. There's been meetings with Walpole, and it's back on the 10-year plan. But once again, it's on the 10th year of the 10-year plan, 2029, and will, it's basically demolition by neglect. And the one thing that we haven't done is ask our congressional delegates to help with this. And we did, Shane had been looking at suing New Hampshire, and because we're not a party to the agreement, it's the federal highway, we can't do that, which is why the request to reach out to our local officers of our 2 senators and our representative.
Maybe depending on how the election goes there, we ought to go right to the top. Don't fiddle with the little boys, go right to Uncle Donald and see what do you put some pressure on him.
Tell them it's impeding commerce. Yeah. I know Deborah did a lot of work on that early on.
Didn't you contact us?
Yeah, I contacted everybody I could
I know you
find.
did that with
Yeah.
Highway Administration, but I thought you contacted the legislators too.
I did.
Yeah.
The legislators who signed letters and so on and so forth, but it just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they still, and that budget, the 10-year plan wants us to find, wants to find other sources for the 50% of the bridge.
$3.5
That's if-
million, yeah.
Yeah, and that's if only $7 million is required to build the entire, to do the entire structure. So,
And wasn't,
I haven't had anything
yeah,
positive since then. Gary's
and
got the most information.
no help from the individual that you spoke with about them not maintaining the agreement along with that Kellyville agreement?
They haven't had, that was the historic preservation, the federal historic preservation
Yeah.
board. They had not, they didn't get any traction. No feedback, no letters back, no plan. They were supposed to have a plan when they memorandum of understanding was
Right,
done.
memorandum of
there was supposed to
understanding,
be
yeah, MOU.
a plan submitted to show how they were going to maintain the bridge. They never did, and they were requested last year or the year before to do so, and they never did. So nothing's happened with that.
To me, it sounds like Steamtown all over again, but it may be like Peter says, and you're talking ratchet it up a notch to somebody higher, like, well, it'd be Pat Leahy or Bernie Sanders or somebody, and at least rattle the saber and say, hey, we had this agreement. Although we're not a party, state of New Hampshire failed to maintain their end of the deal, and as a result, we're suffering because we have a loss of a bridge between here and New Hampshire.
Commerce, safety.
Exactly, yeah. Plus the addition,
Tourism.
enhancing the island industrials. You talked 2 bridges, et cetera,
Yes.
early on in one of our meetings, yeah.
Gaetano, you had something? No. So you're just looking for agreement to,
Concurrence with the message, yes.
I would say
Come from
we
the
have
town.
no problem with it.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do something. I mean,
Okay.
Just one question. You said it was on the 10th year of the new 10-year?
Yeah, so the
2029. 2029.
It's on,
So it's just starting another 10-year?
every year they put out a 10-year plan. And
It could be just as easily dropped next year.
yeah,
Okay,
that's,
there's no
that's.
And they
that's
may
what-
move Congress or Leahy or somebody would move in a legal matter, is what you're saying. Because we can't, because it's on a federal level. If
Yes.
they've neglected a contract, then.
look, put pressure on the Federal Highway Administration, basically, is where it's gonna go, but,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt, I mean,
No, that's right.
yeah. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
When, about 10 years ago, when a couple of the states in New England were not applying the appropriate paratransit services to public transit, and the Department of Justice was insisting that on everything except a commuter run, there was paratransit service. And a lot of the transit agencies were calling a lot of runs commuter runs, which didn't pass the Department of Justice's criteria for that. What Federal Highway did was hold back the millions of dollars of grants that fund public transit for all 3 states that they were having a hard time with until they complied, put through plans that complied. So the federal agencies can apply pressure if it makes sense for them, and it seems like we have a pretty good legal, economic, and safety case to bring
Right.
to our.
Are you familiar with the MOU that Deborah referred to?
Yes,
Because
that's the one in
it mentioned
1995 that's federal.
It highlighted in there, out of my memory, about the funds you're talking about to maintain that structure
Yes.
as a result of the exchange,
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
I'm
mean,
glad
this
you're on
is,
top of it, Gary.
when you look at New Hampshire's priority bridge list, this is like 316 or something. I mean, it's way down the list. Even though it probably gets put on that 10-year list because of this agreement, if any reason. And then they just keep bumping, or dropping it. But yeah, I think we have no problem. Anything we can to, and any help you need from us, I
Great.
think we'll be happy. Yeah.
Good.
That's
Thank you.
really good.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot. All right, review overtime and comp time report. Any questions on that? Comments? Concerns?
Sure.
Yep.
I mean, then we pay someone else to paint the roads.
Are you talking about the second one, the October 15th through 28th?
Yes.
We did some of it and we paid folks to do some of it.
So this is overtime for them to mark what they were gonna paint or something?
Oh, actually, you know what, probably, I can look it up if you want, but what I'm guessing it is, or it could be a number of things. We marked the roads for the painting of the crosswalks, we marked them for the painting of the, parking spaces, and then we marked them most recently for the, center lines. So, based on this date, it was probably the center lines, actually.
So this was just marking, we didn't do the painting.
Correct.
Nope.
And painting?
Yeah.
And painting, marking street and painting road and
Well,
sweeping.
it might have been what, some of the crosswalks that they did?
Well, basically, I did the parking spaces, the center lines haven't been done.
Right.
Right, but the marking, I think, was the center lines, but I can find out.
Yeah, it was only Gary that did the painting. It says, and that memo could be wrong, because the others say marked streets for road painting.
Mhm.
Right,
And then,
but yeah, it does say painting roads.
And painting,
Maybe,
so that
No,
might-
maybe that was supposed to be a 4, I don't know.
I saw those guys painting, I know,
They were
I saw
painting?
Gary out there, 'cause I yelled at him when I went by. I know Gary was out there doing that.
okay. All right, any other questions, concerns? All right.
Yeah, what's the, go over to Hooksett? What do you, just take a ride over to Hooksett, or we go get something?
I think that might have been getting the, machine that.
That
eats the pavement.
yeah,
That's
okay.
one of the problems with renting it, is it's far, it's a day.
You have to go
of
get it.
Time to go get it.
All right, we want to do the election results?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
well, as a matter of fact,
You can do that. Start at the top.
myself, I would think I'll just turn right over to Madam Chair.
All right,
Here's the tape.
here is the tape. Okay, election results. We had 1,680 cast.
Wow.
Yep,
Turnout.
a pretty good turnout. Bernie Sanders for senator, 1,207. Lawrence Zupan was the next behind, 349. Governor's race, Christine Hallquist, 834. Phil Scott, 697.
Lieutenant.
Where's Lieutenant Governor? Here we are. David Zuckerman, 1104. Don Turner was behind, 474. State Treasurer Beth Pierce, 1160. Richard Morton was next behind at 448. Secretary of State Jim Condos, 1124. Brooke Page, 381 was the next behind. Auditor of Accounts Doug Hoffer, 1051. Richard Kenyon at 445. Attorney General TJ Donovan, 1156. Jansen Wilhoit was next behind at 363. State Senator Becca Ballant at 1,005. Jeanette White, 998. State Rep Carolyn, 1233. Carolyn Partridge, 1233. And Matt Treber, 1218. Probate Judge Jody French, 1319. Assistant Judge Lamont Barnett, 1155. Patricia Duff, 1115. State Attorney, who is just the one. Tracy Shriver, 1336. Sheriff Keith Clark, 1294. High Bailiff Mark Anderson, 1138. Thomas Finnell, 227. Justice of the Peace. Oh, I hope there's only 15 listed here, because
No, there's more.
It's 17.
I have to go down. Okay, Paul Obohoski, 1036. Dennis Hardy, 960. Ray Masuko, 932. Gloria Vancourt, 822. Leslie Goldman, 834. Trying to do it in order, but not actually doing it in order. Christopher Berry, 819. Stephen Goletz, 762. Colin James, 677. Oh, Sally McPhee, sorry, 875. Cass Wright, 629. Deb Wright, 643. Stephen Crofter, 595. I don't know if I've gotten to 15 yet, but John Perks, 477. Did I skip someone? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think that might have been it.
So go back to the governor, Christine
Hallquist, Christine
Won over
Hallquist.
Scott?
Yeah.
Got it, was over
Well,
Scott.
here.
Well, that's just
834
here. That's
here
just here.
to
Oh, here.
697.
Oh,
Here.
here.
Yeah.
I'm nervous, where is the
Our area.
little wheel of the cog
Alright.
here, darling?
Keep in mind, those aren't certified either.
No,
It's a big Democrat
that's right.
area down here, that's
Yeah.
why she got the vote.
Yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen in the statewide race. All right, great.
Give you something to watch tonight when you get home.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
All right, thanks. Review task list. We don't do that right now. So next quarterly, we're doing those now. Review agenda items for next meeting. We've got our budget.
Right, and I have highway development, meeting house, and then administration, the manager, finance, and the miscellaneous departments.
Okay. And then we'll have the 5-year comparison at that point
Yes,
that
and
we
I
can.
actually, yeah, I have a sample to give you just for the format, to see if you guys
All
are
right.
like this format, so.
And then we can get back to you if we want
Right,
something slightly
right, what I
different.
did, can I just explain, is that okay?
Yep.
Instead of having 3 columns in the previous years, we just have 2 columns of, budget and an actual. I think the actual is the most important when you go that far back. So I could even reduce the budget number and just keep the actual if you like, but,
I like to see both.
Yeah, that's
yeah, that's
Budget
fine.
and actual's fine.
So, I don't know, I'll just hand this, I'll give you each a sheet when you leave, so you can see if you like it or not.
Okay. Is there anything else pressing for that meeting? Well, we'll have our
Yeah, looks good.
review of our budget, current year budget.
Yep,
And,
tax stabilization committee appointment.
tax stabilization. Sure, something will come up if we don't. All right. Review agenda items for joint board meeting. We are having a joint board,
Oh,
for the, is that scheduled for on
actually,
the 27th
on the
or not?
27th, it's, the idea is to have a select board meeting prior to the village trustees meeting, so that everyone will be able to be there, but, it's technically a select board meeting because the bridge is a
Oh, right,
town
yeah.
responsibility. And the item on the meeting will be just the presentation from V-Trans of the bridge alternatives.
Okay.
27th?
Yes.
Not the 29th?
No, 27, whatever that
Is that right, the 27th? Maybe
The
I wrote
Tuesday,
There's 9
right
here.
before the trustees meeting.
What's this? What?
It's a January 29th. It's the-
That's the next joint board
the
meeting.
Oh.
First of the year.
Correct.
Yeah, this
but
one
it's
is in
actually the
November,
27th.
but this one's in
No,
November.
this is a select board meeting on the 27th,
Oh,
Right.
November 29th.
Prior-
Joint board's on the 29th.
Yeah,
January 29th.
yeah. Prior to the trustees meeting.
What time's that gonna start? I have 5 o'clock.
5,
5 o'clock, I think, isn't it?
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, and it is the 27th of November.
Yes.
Tuesday, the November 27th is the select board meeting before the trustees meeting. That will be a presentation by V-Trans on the bridge alternatives, the Depot Street Bridge alternatives.
At 6.
Okay. All right, and they've confirmed, you said? the
Yes.
date. Yeah, good.
Yes, and we sent out the notifications to the affected parties, which we defined very broadly, so more than was necessary were notified.
All right. Nothing, I can't think way into January, so. Review and approve orders, bills, and warrants.
Make the motion, we approve the orders, bills, and warrants as
Second.
circulated.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any other business? Doreen?
No, except, how long did this take you to do 15
Well-
pages?
No, that one I modified an existing
Preloaded.
one,
Oh.
but I changed it, and
Okay.
obviously we need to put new numbers, so the numbers, the new numbers in that one are not, they're not checked yet.
This is just to look at the format.
Right.
Yeah, I like it.
I'll get to you in a second.
Yeah, I've been in a couple times on this. There's a situation that's going to be developing on 121. You and I have talked about is that building out there.
Right.
Well, there's more developments going on. I spoke to Carrie about getting the note to Everett. Mike's aware of it. We may have some issues there, and somebody ought to look into it before winter hits and we end up plowing out there.
Mm-hmm.
The problem you're gonna run into, and possibly might run into, there are 3 different right-of-way measurements out there on 121 through Saxon River. I can tell you that from looking at the fire station out there. So it may be a problem and may not, but I think when you go out there, you'll know what it is. I'm not gonna mention names, but I think somebody ought to look into it before we get a problem.
Okay. And you've notified us, so that.
I
it's on
notified
the
both
list.
Everett and Mike today.
Okay.
They're well aware of it.
Great.
Okay. Stefan,
No, we're good.
downtown.
Nothing.
You had something, Glenn?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say, again, with all boards, I just hope that there's gonna be some light at the end of the tunnel to get tax rates stabilized and come down, because I'm pushed to a max. I was adding up the other day between all the increases at over $12,000 to have an acre and a half of land and houses in Bellows Falls. And times 15 years is $180,000. And I ain't a rocket scientist, but it doesn't make sense to live in this community for 15 more years at $180,000. My dad built, like I said, the development years ago, sold land for $1,500 for a half-acre piece of land, village water and sewer. The taxes are outrageous based on what people earn for income. So if you want to buy my house for $125,000 and you don't got to do much, you're welcome to it, even though it's assessed at $144. I'm just saying, you're going to see a lot more delinquencies.
We're gonna try our best to cut this tax down, that's what we're doing.
Ask the state for help or something. I'm talking bring people's tax bill, not $5,000, $6,000, need to be brought down reasonable around $3,500.
That's a big ask.
Well, the young people are gone.
But
and you
again,
have
a
what?
lot of that is the school.
A lot of it's the school,
Somebody,
60%.
rather somebody at the state level or something to pay for education or something. Send them a letter and say it's gonna collapse, because that's what you're getting in this community, it's collapsing.
All right.
Just by
Literature?
looking at your police budget
Alright.
shows you what's happening.
Executive session? You
Oh,
got
yeah,
it.
we didn't need an executive session? I don't think so, yeah.
Just throw it out. That's coming though.
I don't, dude.
All right.
No.
Move
Did you
to
have
adjourn.
something you wanted to say? You had your hand up.
No.
No,
Okay.
he
Refrain.
decided not to go there. All right, I am looking for a motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. 7:30.